Aloha, my beautiful friends. This is Krista Lakshmi coming to you from beautiful San Diego, California. I call myself New Time Coach. I believe that each one of us, we have a treasure box hidden. And once we start to open it, we can start to manifest our inner fairy tales into this world as our dreams on our terms. And welcome to this episode of Abundance in Action. And we are very lucky and very honored to host today a very special guest directly from Hawaii, Captain Cook to be precise. And welcome, Noa Gaia Lakshmi.
Hello, Crystal. Thank you so much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here and with you.
Yeah. So before we dive in, because there is so much we can talk about and converse about, I would like to say some words about who is Noa Gaia. So you call yourself life optimizer. And I think this is something which is so needed nowadays. We have so many things to handle. So that's a very needed skill. And you call yourself also a self-love queen. And you are also a lifestyle design specialist. You are also a cleansing specialist, mentor, speaker, author, life upgrade specialist as well. And in all, I could say you are a person who is not only bringing the heaven to earth, but you are also actually with your life, you are embodying the heaven on earth and also guiding others how they can connect and reconnect with their heaven on earth. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel really touched.
Yay. And it's a really exciting story when we look back, like how you have become the person and the queen of self-love today. So many years ago, you were only 20 years old and you actually decided to leave Israel and take off to New York. And that's quite a young age to just leave and go to a place like New York. And New York is one of my favorite places too. Would you tell us a little backstory to that? And how did New York come to your orbit? And to go from so far to New York, that must have been quite a challenge.
Yeah, I love that story and I love sharing that story. It represents so much of who I am, which is I'm a free spirit and I've always been that since I was little, since I can remember myself. And my name actually, which is NOA in Hawaiian, it means to be free. It means freedom. And so it didn't feel like a challenge at that time. It was something, I guess you can say, I'm a very courageous soul as well. And I didn't know that I was going to leave for the rest of my life. And so just a bit of a backstory of what was happening in my life back then. I got to a point, and at the age of 20, that I felt I was in Israel and I felt that my life was a bit stale. Everything was going off, kind of like off course. I noticed that all my friendships weren't fulfilling anymore. And I didn't feel fulfilled in my life. My relationship with my mom that I was living with at the time, because my parents are not together, that relationship started to go sour. And something felt off in my life. That's the best way I can describe it. I had a really good friend from Israel that had moved to New York. And she was there. And she kept telling me, hey, come and visit, come and visit. That's how New York was in my orbit. And also a big part of that story is that I was heartbroken. The guy that I was seeing at the time, we weren't together. And I was so brokenhearted by that. And so everything was off. And I remember that one evening I was participating in a bartending course. And I was kind of dating a guy there, but I was so in love with my other boyfriend that it wasn't really going the way he wanted it to go because my heart was somewhere else. And we got off the phone one evening. And I remember laying on my bed after I got off the phone with him. And I remember that moment like it was yesterday. I said internally to myself, I'm going to New York. I'm just done here. And a month later, I was on a plane. So from that moment, I knew that I had a couple of more weeks in the bartending course. And then there was the process of getting a visa, you know, the interview and all of that stuff. And it took a month, about a month and a half. So July 15th is when I left Israel. And again, I thought I was just going to go for 6 months. And then my plan was to go traveling in South America. And I ended up living in New York for 7 years. The guy that I was heartbroken about ended up coming to New York, and we ended up living together for a couple of years. And so that was just the beginning of a complete new chapter in my life.
New York is, it's such a haven of multicultural, multi-everything. It's very easy to get lost there, but you actually dove deeper into yourself and who you are, and you started to explore different types of yoga. Can you share with us that journey, because you went through like several different types of yoga? And where are you with that journey today? And yoga is such an amazing science of body, mind, soul, and it has so much to contribute to all of us and our lives. But so often people are maybe scared or have negative experiences, so they need a little more encouragement and maybe also different stories to feel like, okay, maybe I should still put the toe in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't know what New York was about. Like definitely didn't go there for the glamour or the party life. That wasn't my life at all. Before I got into yoga, that happened in New York for the first time. I was living there for about a year and just saving money because I knew I wanted to go traveling. So I was working in a coffee shop, and I'm a very focused and dedicated person, and you can say I'm very spiritual in my nature. I've always been since I was little, as I said. And so that's why New York, the draw wasn't the party life and all of that. It was an exploration of let's just see what's here. And then yoga found me, actually, and I never pursued that. I didn't even know what yoga was before I started yoga. And I did not start yoga because of any spiritual, now that I was aware of any spiritual reasons. I was very much into exercising and wanting to, improve my health and look better. So it was kind of like a superficial reason why I started yoga, and it was Bikram Yoga. So Bikram Yoga was my first introduction to yoga. And for people that don't know, Bikram Yoga is the hot yoga. It's a sequence of 26 postures and a couple of breathing exercises. And I started hearing about it because back then it started to become a really popular thing, especially in New York, LA, and the big cities. And I started hearing about it. And what I started hearing is that you burn a lot of calories because you do yoga at 90 minutes in a hot room. And that I was like, I'm there. And so I went to do my first class and I was hooked. And that's my nature. When I am really passionate about something, I dive in head first and I don't look back. And so I got into Bikram Yoga. I got addicted in a sense. I was in that hot room 6 days a week. So I was working and doing Bikram Yoga. That was my life for like a year and a half in New York. And after I had practiced for a little while, and I went to South America, and then I went back to New York. After doing a few classes, the message came very clear to me, oh, I want to teach this. And that's when I went and I did a teacher training, and I was full-time yoga teacher in New York for a few years. And so that was my life, just teaching yoga, doing yoga, all Bikram. And the introduction to other forms of yoga came later on when I moved to Maui. And that's when I started exploring other modalities of yoga. And the thing with yoga is that there's so many different styles, and people can get intimidated, but there's different levels, there's different styles, there are different teachers, and now even more so. So I started yoga, it was 2003. So 17 years later now, there's so much available and so many different combinations of different styles. So people can really say, like, dip their toes and find what resonate with them. And things change. Like, I don't do Bikram anymore, but I was addicted for years. Like, you couldn't convince me to do anything else. And now it's too rigid for me, for my body. And so I enjoy different varieties and different styles and moving more intuitively. And some people can pick and choose what works for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have been now for years very dedicated with Kundalini yoga, and you have expressed, you have lots of videos on your YouTube channel too. You have expressed that this is like a new technology, like body technology. Can you share shortly what are those different elements of Kundalini yoga which really, really inspire and motivate you to keep doing, especially that type of yoga for you?
Right. Yeah, man. Kundalini yoga completely shifted my life in so many ways. I now currently, my practice varies depending on what I feel is right for me. So I don't even, follow Kundalini yoga strictly in the way that I used to. However, I have so much appreciation for that style of yoga because it utilizes the key elements of life and the key elements of the awakening of our life force, which is breath, sound, and light. And Kundalini yoga is a technology because it uses the body in such intelligent ways. It engages our prana, it engages our voice, and it engages our energy body, and to awaken that Kundalini energy that lives in the base of the spine. So ultimately, every style of yoga is designed to do that with different asanas, with different movements and compressions and extensions of the body. And Kundalini yoga, though, is a little bit different than the other styles of yoga in a sense that it doesn't have the regular asanas or the movement that people typically see in a yoga practice. It focuses more on the breath. So there's a lot of breathing exercises, and the breath is where the life force is. And it focuses on mantras, which engages the voice and the technology of sound. And it engages, as I said, the light in the body through meditations. So Kundalini yoga practice can vary from very intense, some practices can be very intense, to all the way to extremely meditative and very, very mellow. That is more of a inward focus. So it's medicine. And what it does is that it goes into the subconscious, using the breath, using the mantra, using the voice, using light to clear away, to chip away through any blocks, internal blocks, physical blocks, energetic blocks that keep us separated from that life force that we call Kundalini energy that moves up and down our spine, which what happens then when there's blockages there, people are disconnected from their divine nature and from expressing that divine nature fully and completely and freely. So in Kundalini yoga, a person receives an experience of their own soul, of their own divinity, by engaging all those elements during a practice. And the consistency of Kundalini yoga, of doing it, on a daily basis, at least for a period of time, is when people see incredible results. I saw it in my life and people that I work with and students and clients, and it is so life-changing in so many ways.
Yeah, very powerful. So what would you say to people who have had maybe negative experiences, maybe bad teachers, or like in my case, I've tried also so many different types of yogas, and I have two extremes. Like one is it's so boring, I'm almost like falling asleep during the class, or the other one is like it's so like excruciatingly challenging, it's so intimidating, and I'm like afraid to hurt myself or break myself. And the teacher also then usually doesn't support that well. And the only yoga type which I found like matching with maybe what I go through with my body right now is the aerial yoga. And the rest is I haven't really clicked. Maybe it's also the question of the teacher. What would you say to people who have had similar experiences with yoga? Because I know the benefit is there, but there's also lots of that, how to move through that and then dive into the yoga which would match for you. How do you find the right yoga for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. As I said, there are so many different styles, and it's a matter of exploring and find what works for you. And I've noticed that in life, you can find something to not work for you or be boring or whatnot. And then a year later, you may try it again, and all of a sudden it's, wow, it's such a different experience, right? So to always remain open, to always remain curious, and to listen to the signs and see what works for you at any given time. And yeah, the teacher sometimes makes a huge difference. And I personally now, as I said, I like to combine different styles. I actually combine Kundalini Yoga with Vinyasa and do more of an intuitive movement. And just because something is good for you, we hear that it's good for you, but it might not be suitable. And yes, yoga is an amazing technology, and it has been a medicine on my path. But there's so many different things. So you might enjoy aerial yoga now, and that's great. And some people are more into qigong or tai chi or dancing, and so to me, because I'm coming from a very rigid mindset. I was just very rigid with Bikram Yoga, with Kundalini Yoga, and I still have that focus, but I am much less rigid in a sense of, yes, I've got personal practice, I have my daily practice, but it's much more intuitive. Mm-hmm. So I go through periods where actually my body doesn't feel like doing the structural yoga postures, and I feel like moving more freely. And then I go into a period where, yeah, my body is craving that flow, that sequence. So the bottom line with all of that is, what's important is every person find the ways that help them to feel good in their bodies at any given moment. And at some point, a yoga can be a great medicine, but then it might be, a time to switch to maybe a different style of yoga, a completely different practice, and to be open to that, and to not. Most important thing is to have the mind flexible and to be open to change when change is being asked.
And I think also two things which you mentioned here are very important. Is one is timing, because we also have, our bodies have seasons, I've had times where I did aerial silks and it was a season for it, and I was like really into that. And then there was times when I did free diving and it was like, season for that. And then the other thing you mentioned here is also personality, because it may be just that certain type of yoga which helps you maybe fine-tune something in you or discipline yourself, So there may be so many facets connected to that. So very good. So one thing which I think yoga is a really good way to remind ourselves, and which is also quite a big focus of your work and your message is that we are generally, as a planet and as humans, being so disconnected. And one of the ways we are disconnected is we are disconnected from our bodies. And you had a huge experience and a personal challenge with that when you had your food issues and moving through that. And I think that's one of the things which is very, and it's getting more and more serious all over the world. Just as I mentioned in our conversation with the emails, I have a very nice friend in Hawaii, Vianna Reynolds, who has written a book about food addiction. And I think so many of us, we are not conscious in our relation to food or our bodies. And I have gone through like a major process with it myself. Like just during the last years, I've lost like 30 pounds and changed my diet. And now I put like, physical movement and all of those things are like the number one priority in my list of things to do. Like this morning, I jumped into the ocean and I walked and I did all my morning things. So I'm full as a person. So I can do this podcast and deliver more because I'm full. I took care of me. So what do you say about that journey of disconnection to the body and food, and maybe not conscious to the food, and also your journey with that relation to the food and self-love as well?
Yeah. Oh, Crystal, this is great. I can talk about this for hours and hours.
Yeah.
So, yeah, um, as I said, yoga for me was medicine. That was a healing. That's when big healing started happening in my life, is through Bikram Yoga in particular, because Bikram Yoga, 90 minutes, and then in a 90-minute class, you're actually looking at yourself in the mirror the whole time. And that was the biggest challenge for me. It wasn't the postures or being in a hot room. It's like, okay, yeah, that's challenging, but it's not a big deal. For me, it was actually looking at myself in the mirror and not hating what I saw. And when I started actually liking what I was seeing, that's when I realized, oh man, this is not just yoga. There's some profound shifts that are happening for me mentally and emotionally. And that's when I realized the potency of yoga as medicine. And my journey with that, so I had eating disorders when I was in high school, late teens, and all the way into basically until I started practicing Bikram Yoga. So it was anorexia and then bulimia and a complete disconnection from my body. And on a spiritual level, deeper layers of that, there's some sort of a spiritual disconnection of not really realizing the divine that lives within me. Like, this is all verbiage that I'm using now, but back then I had no idea. And my healing path started through yoga and through Bikram Yoga, as I said. And then when I realized the potency of that, and I was already so passionate about food and about health, it started to, again, the process was unfolding naturally. I started learning more about food and started eliminating things out of my diet and learning more and more and more and more. And I became more and more passionate with the yoga and with the food and with nutrition. And that's when I started working with clients as a coach. And after a few years, I had the realization regarding self-love. Like, that was never something that I thought about. Again, it wasn't a term that I even used. But I realized, well, what is that piece? What is that glue that actually helps people not only make a change, but stick to that? Because I kept seeing, well, people get, very enthusiastic or excited about a yoga practice or excited about a new diet, and they feel great for a few weeks or maybe a few months, maybe even a year, but then going back to same habits. So I started thinking and contemplating, well, what makes a difference? What actually compels a person to catalyze a shift or start something new and actually maintain that. And that's when self-love came into the picture, and I realized the value of self-love and what it means, and realizing that self-love actually in its core is, first of all, myself and others realizing what is this body and what lives in this body, and recognizing the divinity that we are in this physical body. So I started putting all those pieces together based on my journey and my exploration and my observation through the years of teaching yoga and working with clients and diving deeper and deeper into the health of this physical body. And why is it so important? Because our soul lives in this body. This is a vehicle, and this is a temple. And when there's a disconnection from this physical body, from this temple, then there's disconnection from our true nature, actually.
And you had this really interesting notion there. You said that moment when you had that insight, like, oh my God, I'm comparing myself with others. And this is such a crucial moment, I think, when all of us, when we stand up to that, like, yes, I am different, but it doesn't mean that I'm worse or like they are better. It's just that I'm different, I'm unique, and it's my responsibility to take care of my body, my temple, and clean my house and keep it clean so that, you know, I can converse and relate and communicate with the world and share my gifts the best way I can. Otherwise, I'm moving around as a garbage, you know, car or whatever bin. So can you tell us a little more about that insight of comparing with others and how that is actually, I see it almost like a little disease in all over the world, like how it really screws us up, you know?
Yeah, I want to talk about the real pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's a virus. It's the way I explain it, and I talk about it in my book too, is that we are infected with many viruses and what is called a human condition. So we have a human experience, and our human experience is vastly different than the way it was designed to be because of the human condition. And what do I mean by the human condition? It's all those viruses that we've been infected with, the conditioning of our mind, and we are actually slaves to certain programs. One of them being the comparison, because comparison leads to competition, and comparison leads to separation. And those are some of the most extreme diseases and viruses that we are subjected to. And it comes through us through the media. It comes to us through the media mainly. And when I look back at myself and my journey, one of the factors that contributed to my eating disorders and distorted self-image and the comparison was the media. As a young girl, as a young woman, and it's not just me, all over the world, subjected to very twisted and distorted messages around body image, and especially women. But it's something that we see regardless of gender. Again, the competition and separation. So it got really deep into my consciousness, and I'm still reversing that. I've lived pretty much my entire adult life comparing. And of course, got the message of I am not good enough. And I wanted to change everything about myself. Like Crystal, I wanted the colors that you have. Like I wanted to be blonde. I wanted to have blue eyes. I dyed my hair blonde for many years. Like you can see pictures of mine from late teens or early 20s, and I was dyeing my hair. I contemplated putting contacts in at some point. I wanted to have a nose job. I wanted to have a boob job because my breasts are too small in my perception, right? Where did I get all those messages? So that was just a big disease in my consciousness that I learned to reverse and to come to a place of wholeness within myself where there's no comparison, which again, it comes from a place of recognizing my divinity and the uniqueness in which my divinity expresses itself.
Would you say that that acknowledgement of divinity is one of the core first steps people could take to get out of it, or are there some other steps you would recommend them to take?
That's a great question, and it depends on the person and where they're at in their awareness, because with some people, and myself included, when you're not exposed to that kind of verbiage and culture, then if I came to somebody and introduced to them the concept or the idea of that they are divinity, for some people, it's like I'm speaking Japanese. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. So, as you know, as a coach, is meeting a person where they're at. And it's not about good or bad. Like, we all start somewhere. So if somebody is already open and have a certain grasp or an understanding of that, then we can start with there and build upon it. And for some people, it's something that they start to be open to and receive that at a later stage. So it really depends on where the person is at and what the starting point is. Yeah, because also, I know that I've spoken to people that they have no idea what I'm talking about when I say the divinity lives in every cell in your body. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I've had that too. And also I think one other thing here is so many times, especially when you start to work as a coach, you start to see what's like wrong with people. And sometimes it's like, almost feels like you would like to tap on their shoulder, like, hey, you could do this and that, but we have to be like patient and wait for them to come to us and ask for that information and be ready. And if they're not ready, it's no point of sharing that information. So I think that's the challenge also. And also, even if you're not the coach, like also with people who are closest to you, like that's the same thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like if take my mom, for example, I spoke with her 2 days ago. Like, it's not something I can tell her. She would know. She wouldn't know what I'm talking about. And even myself included, as I said, when I started doing Bikram Yoga, I was 24. That was not part of my verbiage. I would not. If you had told me that back then, I wouldn't have resonated with that. Because to me, I started doing yoga because I wanted to look better, and it's like, okay, it doesn't matter. Let's get you through the back door and then take it from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and every person has to find their way into, like, the foot into the door. For some, like you, it was yoga. For me, it was basically angel therapy where everything started. So everyone has their way, how the soul is knocking on the doors, like, okay, now you're ready, let's go deeper. And then you start to take your baby steps. So now let's dive a little deeper into the topic of food, because I'll share a little story of my country and how this relates to my relation to food, and then you can fill in a little more because you have so much more knowledge about this topic. So I'm from Estonia, which many people maybe don't know. We were occupied by Russia for 50 years. And during the Soviet times, what happened was that we had real shortage of food and certain items. So my grandmother, who was raising me mainly, was very resourceful, figuring out ways to always have food on the table. We had a little garden, so we got lots of the fruits and veggies from our garden. And she always managed to do jams and all kinds of things to get us through the cold winters as well. But I realized that with that culture and also collective consciousness with food, and also during the Second World War, where basically many homes ran out of food because everything was just so closed down and resources were difficult to get to. So the collective consciousness, which is connected to Estonia, I think had that, you have to always eat a little extra because you don't know where that next meal may come. And this consciousness or awareness came to me only like a couple of years ago when I was going through a family constellation workshop, and I was just observing my own patterns connected to that. And I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. And then I started to really observe, like, how much do I eat and how do I combine my food? And I started to do deeper detoxes. I had a really amazing healer in Mexico who did liver detoxes for certain period of time, combining food. And it was like first time I did the liver detox, I think 7 to 10 days. I was like amazed, like my skin looked like a baby skin. I was like a new person coming back into life with new awareness. And then after that, I think I went a little extreme. I started to try all kinds of detoxes. So I even did a yoni detox, which was like really extreme. And over the years, it has really given me lots of insights about food and my body and how it's connected and disconnected. And then also I did do a little amazing program they actually have in Hawaii on the Big Island. There is a program called Trunk Trainers, and they do like challenges. That one was 6 weeks to eat differently and work out differently. And then this one was mainly for losing weight. And I did that. And then that was my reset for realizing, oh my God, I'm combining the food completely wrong. I'm eating too big portions, and all, fats and like everything is like out of alignment. So as I started to realign those things and combine food and have the right portions, the change and shifts, and of course the whole outside of me changed. So every time people met me, they didn't recognize me anymore because I had changed. Like my physical started to change, and that was like such an amazing journey. But it doesn't come overnight, and I think that's what people also maybe have to remind themselves, that you have to be patient and you have to be like kind of stick to it, because so many times we slip back into the old ways. So do you have any comments of that? And then you can tell about relation to food, how to change that.
Oh my God, I've got so much to say about that. Oh, and thank you so much for sharing your story. And it deeply resonated with me, and is connected to my lineage. My mom is actually from Latvia.
Oh, wow.
And
we are almost relatives.
Yes, exactly. And so she
Cool.
grew up there. She moved to Israel when she was 17.
Wow, quite a story.
So it is part of my lineage. And what I discovered as it relates to food, what you were sharing about the kind of having that scarcity mentality, right? The survival, like I've got to drink, I've got to eat as much as possible. I found in my own exploration, family constellations and realizations around food, that is connected to the Holocaust and the mentality of, again, that scarcity. And I've got to eat as much as possible, before it goes away. And so it doesn't really matter what kind of food one's eat, is the relationship to it. Because I eat very simple, I eat very pure, I eat very clean. But I had a realization, my relationship with food is not actually healthy. So it doesn't matter what I'm eating. On the emotional and energetic level, there's something out of alignment. So it really resonated with me what you said, and I feel that we have some parallel lines there. Yeah, and that's another disease in our society, 100%, when it comes to food. I've been saying this for years, that it's the one drug that nobody wants to talk about. And it's okay. It's just a matter of collective consciousness and readiness.
Mm-hmm.
And on the individual level, again, working with clients, is that's almost like the last thing that people are ready to let go of.
Yeah, because it's
They'll let go.
addiction. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. They'll let go of so many things, but when it comes to food, and there's so many belief systems as well, and we are bombarded with so much information and so much confusion, and this is my path, and this is what I'm passionate about. In actuality, truth is simple, always. If it's way too complicated, ask questions, because nature is simple. Complex, yes, but it's simple. Our bodies are very simple, very complex, very simple. Really, it's all about chemistry and and there's nothing to argue with. And our body, and it is just like nature. It's part of nature. But because in our society there's such a massive disconnection, right, from our bodies, from our nature, then things start to get complicated, convoluted, and too complex. And people get lost and people get confused, even on a healthy, when they find themselves seeking for healthier food. So the relationship with food, that's when we go into emotional components. And some people feel very, very uncomfortable going there. Therefore, it's hard to let go of some habits when it comes to food, because there's comfort there. So you were talking about the scarcity mentality. For many people, I know from my own journey, when I had this revelation that I wasn't nourished as a baby. Like, my mom stopped breastfeeding me when I was 2 months old. And it's a whole nother conversation about how depleted mothers are. So the milk itself is not nourishing, actually, for the baby. So I had a very severe sense of not being nourished since I was a baby. And many people walk around with that emotional unconscious baggage without even knowing that there's a deep level of not feeling nourished. And so there's
and then they try to like fill it with like all kinds of addictions and bad stuff and relationships and God knows what, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So food is there's so many emotional components to food.
Mm-hmm.
And when one decides to rectify that, then it brings up a lot of emotions and uncomfortable realizations, perhaps. Yeah.
So right now, just recently, you went through 21 days of water detox and fasting. It's not the first time you have done something like this, but would you share with us why are detoxing or fasting on that extreme like important, and why is it you do it?
Yeah. Oh, wow. This is definitely my path. And this was my first time of doing a 21-day water fast. The longest I've done up until this point was 7 days. And it's a vastly different experience, 7 and 21 days. And I've been preparing my body and my mind for years to embark on a 21-day water fast. And that's my path. And again, now everybody has a different path and different medicine. However, I would say in our society today, modern society, every single person would benefit from a long water fast with the right preparation for it.
And also coming out.
Yes, yeah, with the right guidance, with the right preparation. Some people throw themselves into long fasts without prior preparation, and they get the blowback from that. So there's arts to detoxification. And so the kind of detoxification that I specialize is regenerative detoxification. Because it's not just about the detox, it's about the regeneration. And our bodies are so intelligent and they're so resilient, and they can regenerate no matter how severe the conditions may be. And many people walk around, they seem to be healthy. They look really good, but on the inside, there's a mess going on. And then that mess is going to blow back in their face at some point. So the key is to know how to detox and how to regenerate after that. And as I shared earlier, the key to all of that is self-love. Because if you don't have enough self-love for yourself, then you'll do the detox, whatever. You'll be on the wagon for a little bit, and then you'll go back. But when the motivation is more than just losing weight, is more than just looking good, which is okay. My motivation to go into Bikram Yoga was to look good. But you've got to cross that line and steep yourself in self-love in order to maintain a lifestyle that actually supports your well-being. So when I work with clients, it's always about the foundation of let's love yourself first and then implement the changes, because we want the changes to be long lasting and not just something great to experience for a couple of months. And the water fast that I chose to do is because I got to a point in my life of readiness, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I had several intentions going into the fast. One of them was to deepen my relationship with myself, with God, with my body, heal my relationship with food, and to remove the obstructions physically, emotionally, mentally of God's light that is moving through my body. So anything that is obstructing that, water fast is where you really go deep into the cellular memory of the body and breaking down old material that is sitting in the body and kind of holding old energy with it.
And I think also this process activates, I've felt it so many times, self-patience, to learn to be patient with yourself, and also even if things don't turn out the way you expected or whatever comes through, because every detox, even if you do the same protocol, is completely different because your body is different, you are in a different spot in your life, there are different things detoxifying and so on. So how could people cultivate that self-patience also when they go, especially longer ones like you did, 21 days?
Oh, it's a one day at a time process. And I got to a water fast, a long water fast. It's, of course, everything works together, the physical, the mental, the emotional. At a certain point, though, it's really not about the body anymore. The body does its thing. Like hunger is not even an issue after 7 days. Like it's not even an issue. It's the mental. Like for me, it was watching my mind, just seeing the beast that it is. So how to cultivate self-patience, I feel it's, for me, self-patience is as a result of self-love, being patient with oneself, being compassionate with oneself. And it's something that comes with time and softening the grip of the mind and eliminating, discarding all the conditionings that we've been subjected to. Because we are in a society that is more masculine driven, and the pushing and the comparison and the lack of patience, all those things that we are reversing and moving more into a feminine way of living, being guided by the feminine principles. So one of the feminine principles for me is patience, and something that I'm still learning and I'm still cultivating big time.
Yeah, it's so important. And now what would you suggest for people? I see from your materials and things also, you're very conscious. It seems also the recipes you put together, you're already there also looking into detoxing. So there are certain foods and also veggies and fruits which can help you actually with those detoxifying elements. So you can also support your body detoxifying like every day. Like I just read about parsley. I didn't know that parsley had that effect on the body. So would you also recommend then, I know many yogic traditions recommend like to do 1 day water fast per week, or something regular, so you kind of give your body a little rest, because I think most, if you're not conscious, we are overloading our system too much.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a great question. When it comes to detox, it's a very individual thing. However, one of the things that I give people as a general guideline that can bring about such significant shifts, even if you don't change anything in what you eat, what I give people is start eating your dinner earlier. Best if you eat before sunset. So don't eat after the sun has set, because when it gets dark, the bodies actually start releasing melatonin and preparing the body for sleep. And so if you think about it, we put food in your stomach, in your body, then the body now is needing to digest and all the processes that come with it, where actually the body is like, wait a second, but I'm getting ready to rest. So there starts to be this tug of war. And when people do that on a consistent basis, again, they don't even know, but the adrenals become really taxed, and the digestive system becomes really taxed. And then over time, you start experiencing conditions and you don't put the two together. So I always say, just bring your dinner, start bringing it an hour earlier, 2 hours earlier, until you get to a point where you eat your dinner before sunset. And then eat breakfast an hour later and start pushing it a little bit, so you open the window of time where the body is not digesting. People call it intermittent fasting, right? And that alone is going to shift so much in someone's health, even if they don't change anything in their eating, in their actual food. Just eat earlier dinner and later breakfast. And if you drink coffee, make sure you have something in your tummy. Like, of course, best if you don't drink coffee, but that's one step at a time. At least have something in your tummy before you drink the coffee, because the coffee is so acidic. And when you put that first thing, it literally, think about drinking battery acid.
Mm.
It burns your stomach literally, and doing that every single day. And then, 10 years from now, all of a sudden you wake up and you've got, much greater issues.
Yeah, the first thing I drink every morning is moringa shake. So it should be really good with also alkalizing and all the elements in it. Like, I did research about it and I was so amazed. And while we lived in Hawaii, we actually had a moringa bush in the back garden. So I first time also saw the bush itself. I was like, and it's also immune system boost, because nowadays that's so crucial. I started to also dip into the cold water again. Ocean here is, of course, different temperature than it was in Hawaii or Mexico. So building up that, and I feel like it's resetting the whole body. Of course, it's cold. Of course, it's uncomfortable, but it's just it's awakening the whole metabolism. It gets a little shock and starts to work a little differently. And it's it feels amazing afterwards.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. So thank you for this beautiful journey. And I think we have enough material for actually 2 episodes. So it will be really juicy stuff for our listeners and viewers. So if anyone is interested to take contact with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is noalakshmi.com. I spell Lakshmi with SH because I see Lakshmi, you do just S. So NOALAKSHMI.com. And you can pretty much find every my services and everything there. A YouTube channel for yoga videos and other interviews that I have. That's under my name, Noa Lakshmi, and pretty much my name across all platforms, Instagram, Facebook. I also have a group on Facebook called True Health. You can find the group there. I'm going to be less and less active on Facebook, actually, just pulling myself out into different platforms. So Instagram, YouTube, and my website for sure. And then my email is there on my website, noah@noahlakshmi.com.
And you are so kind also to gift our listeners and viewers with a beautiful, amazing, very abundant gift. Can you say a couple of words about that and how people can put that into use?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a beginner's guide to radiant health. As I said, I'm a big proponent of simplicity, and with the sea of information that people have, especially when it comes to raw food, people get really intimidated because they think, "Yay, you printed it out." People think it's really complicated and they're really intimidated. So my intention with this guide and recipe book is to make things very simple for people to take the first steps and to start incorporating more living foods into their day-to-day life, and how to do it in a proper way, how to do it in a simple way. Those are simple, super simple recipes that a 5-year-old can make, maybe with the help of an adult. But that's my that's my intention, is to make it really, really simple for people, and they can start implementing those little changes into their day-to-day life in an easeful way. And there's some guidelines as well, and a shopping list and explanation of why living foods are really essential and important, and how to pick the right fruit and how to eat it in the right way, and then recipes that you can just experiment with.
Thank you so much. I just had a little quick look into it, and it feels like, wow, this will help me to embody heaven even more.
Yay! Great.
Yeah, so thank you so much. And I wish you all the best with all the adventures and co-creations you are doing on this earth, and what a gift you are to this planet. And thank you for sharing your time and precious being with me and our listeners and viewers.
Crystal, my absolute delight and pleasure. You are such a gem, such an angel, and it is an honor for me to be a guest on your show and to share myself in this space with you. I'm very grateful for you and the invitation to come on.
Yeah. And we also give thanks to our common friend who connected us in Kauai. So yes. Thank you too. So this is the way this world functions nowadays. Who is ready will be connected, and co-creation will be born.
Indeed.
Yeah. Thank you. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Aloha.
Aloha. And for a little reminder for all the viewers, as always, to support this beautiful podcast, please like, share, comment, and also download the episodes so that we can start to grow and even more share the beautiful, amazing nuggets and pearls which our guests bring to us. Thank you so much. Mahalo.
Mahalo.